a symbol forged in fire. In the chronicles of galactic warfare, no moment was more shocking than the day the Emperor of Zarnath Prime descended to the battlefield, not in the crystalline armor of his kind, but encased in Terran-made war armor. All eyes froze. All channels buzzed. Why would the most powerful alien monarch choose human protection over his own? The armor wasn't just symbolic. It was ancient, legendary, scarred by forgotten wars. And it carried with it a message. Humanity's wrath protects me. This is the story behind that moment. A betrayal, of a hidden Terran legacy, of the debt no empire dares to forget. Rain lashed the city of Varith Prime like a wounded beast lashing out in torment. Sky spires shimmered with electric storms. But tonight the storm was internal, a tremor beneath every wall, every voice. The air felt sick, polluted with betrayal. Inside the shattered Hall of Concord, fragments of glass and bodies were still smoldering. Ritual carpets lay charred. The Peace Summit, meant to unify the three noble houses, had gone to ashes. House Barath and House Zeval were extinct, their delegations erased in fire. House Drenix remained, but at what cost? They had detonated the chamber, replacing political negotiation with mass murder. Now only one emperor remained. He staggered through corridors. His left side burned, ceremonial armor buckled. Blood blurred the gold. He moved by force of will, each step a choice between collapse and survival. Security grid offline. Royal Guard life signs at 10%. AI confirms internal sabotage. He leaned on a pillar. Traitors, he whispered, voice broken. Betrayal tasted like copper. His AI, embedded at his temple, kept voice steady. Encryption logs indicate SoulNet hacking from within the guard's core. He pressed his palm to the pillar, eyes drifting. SoulNet was militia tech, rebels and fringe insurgents. Not used in palace circles. Someone inside had asked for it. Someone invited it. He took a breath. Protocol, Zeta Black. Suggest hypercore jump? He shook his head, whispers of neon lights shifting with tension. Too unstable while wounded. They'd track us instantly. Ahead, the vault door to the Ark stood at the end of the corridor, heavy, unyielding, and now his only hope. Should I open sealed emergency link? It will alert House Drenix warships. Open it, he rasped. Let them come. Let them watch my death. They will know I made the choice. The AI responded and the vault doors gleamed open, revealing the silent guardians inside. Rows of stasis pods, dormant systems, and covenanted secrets waiting for breath again. Arc activation in 5, 4. He forced himself onto the central platform as the AI's arms extended, scanning, rewriting his bloodstream. A leak in core pressure. He closed his eyes, could feel fear slip under his ribs. But something else remained too, rage. And choice. Alternate lives arched. The AI shimmered. One mission unassigned. Suit Osiris. Forged in silence war. Programmed with human bioharmonics to mirror stellar pulse. Tempered with empathy. Hardened for survival. Silence. The halls outside trembled further. Distant explosions, shouts, the scream of gunfire. Project Osiris requires sync license. Requires living host. Subject, Alira Voss. His throat tightened. She was the healer who disappeared 10 years ago after saving 3 planets from coronal collapse. She was the enigma who saved worlds with her mind, then walked away. A Terran, estranged from his empire and now, perhaps, his final hope. She's abandoned the empire. She's the only one who can stabilize the star core without a chain react. Do it. Warning, initiating Terran pulse beacon. All hostile fleets within 8 parsecs will detect it. And they will come. The chamber vibrated with a low hum. Vault systems booted. Stasis clamps retracted as the Emperor sank into the Nexus cryo chamber. Lights dimmed to teal. Cooling vapors swallowed him. The Ark hummed to life. Outside palace walls split further apart. Skyships of House Drenix flooded rooftops, armor-piercing drones strafing corridors. Smoke and screams chased one another up endless walkways. Civil war had resurrected. The Emperor's eyes slid shut. His body settled into suspended sleep, bandages of light healing wounds, nanites scanning for infection. His last thought, vengeance, hope, and the unspoken weight of betrayal. His eyes drifted closed. Above him, the AI's hologram pulsed, sending Osiris beacon to coordinates, Juno 12 moonbase. Transmitting, a quantum burst flashed upward, invisible to civilian arrays, but loud in arcane channels beyond common reach. Halfway across the galaxy, something stirred. Beneath Saturn's ringed horizons, deep within an abandoned research dome, a heart began to beat again. The wind over ancient Iceland was sharp, but it carried no scent. The sky was clear, yet stars refused to shine directly over this land, as if the heavens remembered too much. Beneath the snow-laced mountains and the ghost of old tectonics, deeper than any surface map would admit, lay the entrance to Terra Vault A13. It was not guarded by soldiers. There were no surveillance satellites above. It simply existed, like a forgotten prayer locked in stone, waiting for the one soul who could complete it. Only one Terran key remained, and it wasn't made of metal. The Emperor stood before a blank wall of obsidian ceramite, hidden beneath centuries of dust and volcanic ash. His robes were gone, replaced with the practical armor of a traveler. His crown was disassembled, piece by piece, before he ever set foot on Earth. This journey was not imperial. It was penance. Behind him, the escort of Zarnith royal agents stayed behind the first perimeter. They had orders: follow but do not speak. Do not interfere. Earth was no longer part of the Empire. It hadn't been for over 600 years. After the Silence War, the Terrans retreated from galactic diplomacy altogether. No embassies, no treaties, no weapons exported. They became myth again, just as they once were, before the stars called to them. But the myths didn't die. They just went underground. Now, that myth lived in the form of a vault hidden beneath what used to be Reykjavik, untouched by time, climate, or war. The Emperor raised a trembling hand and extended his consciousness. His AI link vibrated softly against his neural spine. Scanning, the AI whispered, biometric resonance unstable. But signal received. The wall shifted, not like a door, but like ice melting from the inside. No gears turned. No alarms blared. Just silence. An unnatural, reverent silence. Then a pulse. A low-frequency hum, like a heartbeat in the earth. It didn't seek fingerprints. It didn't want codes. It sought intent. The vault wanted to know why he was here. He exhaled. Not words. Not thoughts. Just the truth. Peace. Not the peace of treaties and negotiations, but the peace that comes after fire, after mourning, after empire collapses and nothing remains but one question: what could have been done differently? That was the key. The wall liquefied into light. The vault of Terra opened after 400 years. Inside, frost hung like curtains from ancient ceiling panels. Light panels dimmed to a warm amber glow, reacting to footsteps for the first time in centuries. The air was heavy with old nanites and deep reactive alloys that could reforge themselves on command. The chamber itself breathed, slightly behind the rhythm of a human pulse, designed to adjust to one wearer. Only one. In the center of the chamber, hovering just above a ring of stone, was a relic. A suit. It wasn't just armor. It was something between memory and prophecy. The Valkyrian suit, Project Osiris's failed twin, designed not to heal like Osiris, but to protect, to fight, to end war by bearing its burden alone. The neutron-forged plating shimmered with ancient Terran script. The joints breathed. The chest plate held a golden node, crystalline and dim, but not dead. It had once been worn by Commander Ashaviril, a Terran soldier whose final act was to seal a neutron breach in orbit over Zarnith's homeworld, sacrificing her own genetic signature to lock the seal. Her blood was still encrypted in the suit's internal code, and in the myths told to Zarnith children, she was a spirit of iron and starlight. The Emperor stepped closer. "She saved your ancestors," the AI said quietly. "That suit does not recognize crowns, only intentions." The suit turned toward him. It moved without sound, without strings. The Emperor felt its gaze pierce through layers of self, past his titles, his betrayals, his crimes, past his desire to survive. It looked for one thing. Did he regret? Begin link, he ordered, voice hoarse. The chamber responded first. Electrostatic pulses crawled along the walls, rearranging magnetic plates, aligning relic caches in accordance with ceremonial Terran patterns. Symbols once outlawed by the Council of Nine began glowing across the floor. Symbols of rebirth, silence, and blood sacrifice. From a corner, a small secondary terminal came to life, showing flickers of Commander Asha's final thoughts. Her neural data had been encoded into the armor. Not a mind, but a conscience. Not an AI, a memory that felt. The suit spoke. Only once. Why now? He closed his eyes. Because the crown broke. Because I broke it. There was a silence like mourning. Then a slow release of pressure. The suit's plating separated. It unfolded like petals, waiting for a new occupant. It would not judge, but it would remember. I'm not worthy, he whispered. From the far end of the vault, a soft voice echoed. A woman, not visible. No one ever was. It was a neural echo, Asha's last recorded memory, projected like a ghost. And yet, it sounded like a lyra. He stepped forward. Every inch closer pulled old guilt from his spine. When he touched the edge of the armor, he felt her sacrifice burning through him. A long pause. Do you wish to wear the burden? The AI asked. No, he said. And then, but I will. He stepped in. The armor closed. Valkyrian fused with him. He did not scream, but inside, the parasite within him shrieked. Because the armor recognized it, and hated it. The Emperor's spine locked. Pain racked him. The suit's living conscience scanned his blood, his organs, the foreign intruder inside him. Then silence, stasis, and finally balance. The armor didn't expel the parasite. It didn't purge it. It contained it, just like it once did with a neutron breach centuries ago. Outside the vault, the ice winds shifted. Somewhere in the distance, the warp lanes above Earth shimmered, as if sensing the return of something long lost. In orbit, human satellites blinked for the first time in ages. A silent alarm activated, not out of fear, but recognition. Earth knew, and it would not interfere. Not yet, because one of its relics had awakened. The armor did not welcome him. Not with warmth. Not with the reverence one might expect for a crowned emperor seeking salvation. It met him instead with cold indifference, an unblinking judgment forged in a neutron alloy and buried ethics. As the final plate sealed over his spine, the Emperor felt 1,000 needles of neural probes lace into his nervous system. Each one tasted his thoughts, his regrets, his intentions. The AI in his head pulsed a red warning. Cognitive dissonance detected. Subject integrity unstable. The armor responded in kind, its voice not like a machine's, but a whisper made of discipline and memory. This vessel wears power with hesitation, and that is dangerous. A sudden force gripped him, violent and absolute. The armor locked. He could not move. The room tilted. He wasn't in the vault anymore. He stood in a battlefield, but not one he recognized. Glass deserts stretched endlessly. Skies were cracked with orbital firestorms. Artificial moons crumbled above. He heard the scream of atmosphere tearing apart under mass driver fire. This was not a memory. It was a test. Earth, during the Silence War, the final Terran battlefield. He saw human soldiers holding their line against genetically modified Zarnith shock troopers. He recognized the armor of his own ancestors, the crests, the plasma halberds, the sigils of a war long erased from Imperial records. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, but not outwilled. Then he saw her, walking across the battlefield like a myth in motion. Commander Yelling Kai. Her armor pulsed like a dying star, cracks laced with molten silver. She bore 3 plasma wounds, and yet she moved with the serenity of inevitability. She carried no weapon, only the Terran symbol of ceasefire etched across her gauntlet. Zarnith warriors paused as she approached, not out of respect, out of fear, because even mortally wounded, She'd ended 3 orbital fleets by herself, not with guns, but by remotely seizing control of their war cores, imploding them mid-jump. It wasn't called hacking. It was resonance. She walked into the fire and stopped it. The memory collapsed into starlight. And then she turned to him, not in the vision, within his own consciousness. A projection, a remnant echo of her soul, encoded into the Valkyrian suit as a final test for any who dared wear it. Her eyes weren't angry. They were tired, but clear. You carry a crown, but do you carry its cost? He tried to speak, tried to justify, explain, defend the decades of expansion, the economic wars, the broken treaties. But his throat locked. The suit muted him. It wasn't interested in politics, only truth. Yelling Kai continued, "This armor obeys no crown, no empire, no family name carved into a throne of ash. It was made with only one allegiance, purpose, peace, earned with blood if needed." Behind her, the battlefield changed. He saw his empire, not as he had seen it in throne rooms and parades, but as the weak saw it. Orbital blockades, choking civilian planets, biofield experiments on fringe colonies, conscripted children trained in zero-G warfare. Truths he had buried. Truths his father had turned into doctrine. And in the silence that followed, the armor asked a question. Not in words, but in pressure, in chemical shift, so intimate it cut through his spine. Are you willing to bleed for peace? Or do you only fear losing your rule? The Emperor closed his eyes. I don't deserve forgiveness. Yelling tilted her head. No one does. That's what makes it worth fighting for. The battlefield vanished. He collapsed back into the vault. His heart stammered against the neural fusion. The AI blared. Warning, full neurobind detected. This armor is now permanent. He reached up, trying to pull at the neck ring, but it had melted into his skin. The plates weren't resting on him anymore. They were part of him. A second skeleton. No removal. No reversal. This was the price. The AI inside the armor stirred, quieter now. Accepting. The armor had fused. Not because he was pure, but because he had bled in truth. It spoke again, faint, feminine, a ghost whisper. You're no longer a ruler. You're a witness. Your empire will see you, and remember what it cost. A sudden wave of memory surged through him. Not his own, but the armor's. He saw past wearers, Terrans and others. A Saraki monk who used the suit to shield a dying moon. A half-human orphan who wore it to survive a supernova reactor leak. Each wearer died in it, but not one was forgotten. The armor did not allow survival. It allowed sacrifice. Juno's voice crackled over his wrist link, still active from the outer perimeter. Your Highness? Are you alive? He took a moment to answer. No. A pause. But I am awake. Outside, the vault's resonance pulse shifted. Earth responded. Its orbiting satellites shifted in formation. Long dormant frequencies lit up in space. A beacon reactivated, coded in old Terran dialect. Valkyrian active. Operator accepted. Echo recording initiated. The Emperor rose slowly, his joints groaning against the unfamiliar density of neutron-forged alloy now fused into his body. He looked at his hands, now armored, etched in Kai's battle markings. He wasn't just wearing her armor. He was carrying her will, and with it, the ghosts of everyone his empire had silenced. He turned toward the exit of the vault. The war wasn't over, but for the first time in his reign, he would not fight it to win. He would fight to end it. The Emperor returned to a home he no longer recognized. Zarnith, once the jewel of stellar civilization, now pulsed with the chaos of civil war. Fires burned beneath the twin moons. Once ornate skyways crumbled under the weight of rebellion. The spires of the palace, his palace, were scorched black, like bones reaching skyward from the grave of a forgotten empire. He arrived not with fanfare or escort, but in silence. No honor guard, no ceremonial trumpet, only the faint hum of the Valkyrian armor as he descended from orbit in a stealth drop pod. It struck the steps of the high forum like a meteor wrapped in reverence. The crowd that gathered didn't cheer. They stared. The armor shimmered faintly with blue-gold iridescence, runes pulsing like a heartbeat beneath its surface. Its design was unlike anything native to Zarnath. It was older than most civilizations, etched with human symbology, haunted by Terran engineering. He stepped from the crater without a word. His face visible but hardened. The silence broke. A cry from the crowd. He's turned Terran. Another voice, louder. That is the armor of the Guardians. The myths were true. Then a soldier, a young one, fell to his knees. Others followed, but not all. From the shadows of the palace, House Veridax, the most vocal of the traitor factions, launched a volley of plasma darts. They curved mid-air, guided by smart tech, locked onto the Emperor's chest. They struck and fizzled. The armor didn't even flicker. The Emperor didn't flinch. He turned his gaze toward the attacker, who now stumbled backward, eyes wide with dread. No crown, the Emperor said softly, is worth the blood of its people. Then he moved, faster than any royal had ever moved. The armor responded not just to thought, but to intention. He leapt 10 meters in a single bound, landing in the heart of the courtyard. Time seemed to stretch. The crowd gasped. Above, the rebel fleet appeared. Hundreds of strike ships, frigate-class and cloaked fighters, all aiming downward. Civilians screamed and scattered. Air defenses were offline, sabotaged during the initial coup. It was a slaughter waiting to happen. The Emperor closed his eyes. The armor hummed. Inside the suit, neural fibers extended deep into his spine. They pulsed with faint bioluminescent logic. Data surged, not in code, but in emotion. Fear, rage, pain. He felt every pilot in the rebel fleet like a symphony of chaos. And then he reached out, not with weapons, with will. The Valkyrian armor's central core activated its rarest protocol, harmonic override. It was an ancient Terran relic of warfare, designed not to kill, but to disable consciousness through empathy resonance. He broadcast a pulse, invisible to the eye, undetectable by sensors. But to the minds above, it struck like thunder. One by one, the rebel pilots fell unconscious inside their cockpits. No fire, no blood, no deaths. Ships drifted harmlessly, dead in orbit like leaves on a still lake. The crowd below didn't move. Then someone whispered, "He's become one of them, a guardian." It spread like a chant, not born of fear, but of awe. The myth of the Guardians of the Core had been a bedtime story for millennia. Ancient human warriors who once healed stars, ended wars without bullets, and vanished without monuments. No one had believed they existed. Until now. But the chant was broken by the arrival of the real enemy. House Veridax had not come alone. Their generals marched out from the shattered gates, flanked by biomodified guards and exo-tanks bearing the sigil of the Soul Ascendants, a symbol the Emperor had hoped never to see again. A blazing sun wrapped in thorns. He stepped forward, raising his hand. "Lay down your arms." General Siren Veridax, a towering figure in serrated obsidian armor, sneered. "You come back wearing dead myths and expect obedience? You're not our Emperor. You're their puppet." He raised a disruptor cannon the size of a small ship and fired. The shot was antimatter. It struck the Emperor's chest full force. There was a blinding flash, and when it cleared, the Emperor stood untouched. The armor had absorbed it, transmuted it. Its runes flared once, then dimmed. "I'm not your Emperor," he said. "I am your reckoning." He moved again, faster than thought. He struck the cannon with a flat palm. It disassembled mid-air, broken into harmless components. He caught Siren by the chest plate and pulled him close. "Do you feel that?" he asked, his voice cold. "That's what it feels like when you're not the most powerful one in the room." Then he let go. The general dropped, unconscious. Not dead, just removed. The rebel guards didn't move. They didn't run. They knelt. The Emperor turned to the crowd, to his people. But he didn't speak of vengeance. He removed his helmet. His face was drenched in sweat, marked by sleeplessness and sorrow. His voice cracked, not with weakness, but with memory. "I wear the armor of ghosts, not to haunt you, but to remind myself." He looked at the palace, at its ruined spires. "We built this on silence, on buried truths, and the silence is what nearly killed us." A pause. "I went to Earth, not to ask for help, but to remember what we once were before we chose pride over peace." Some wept. Others stood frozen. And then Juno appeared. His assistant, clad in simple diplomat robes, walked beside him with a datapad glowing with emergency updates. "The warp lanes have stabilized," she said. "But more rebel houses are moving. They say you're infected, that the armor has replaced you." The Emperor glanced at her. "Perhaps it has." Juno frowned. "You mean that?" He nodded. "Because I finally understand what they stood for. Yelin Kai, the Guardians. Earth itself. They didn't build weapons to rule. They built them to end the need for weapons." He turned to the sky. Above, the rebel fleet still drifted, safe but silenced. "Let them wake," he ordered. "No charges. No trials." Juno blinked. "You're just letting them go?" "I didn't come back to punish the broken. I came back to stop the breaking." She looked at him for a long time. "You've changed." "No," he said quietly. "I finally stopped pretending I hadn't." In the days that followed, the capital city of Zarnith entered a strange calm. Tanks were dismantled. Protests turned into vigils. The wounded were healed in the Emperor's own hall. Rumors spread across the stars that the Emperor had died and been reborn in Terran fire, that he could not be killed, that he spoke to ships. And though the Emperor denied most of it, he didn't stop the myths, because some myths were needed to protect peace with story, not fear. And far away, in the deepest vaults of a forgotten moon, a sole ascendant operative watched the news feed with narrowed eyes. "The Emperor returned with Valkyrian," she muttered. A shadow behind her spoke. "Then the true war begins." The stars above Zarnith Prime shimmered cold and distant, but the memory they carried burned fiercer than any sun. Centuries ago, long before the current Emperor walked the palace halls, before the rebel banners darkened the skies, a different war raged. A war that almost shattered the fabric of the galaxy itself. The Omega Rebellion. A tempest of fire and betrayal, where the Outer Rim factions sought to wrest control from the old empires. It was a war that threatened not just kingdoms, but the very light of civilization. At the heart of that storm was a Terran fleet. Not many knew their name, nor the sacrifice they made. They came from a world far across the spiral arms, a blue planet called Terra, a civilization that had long since chosen quiet solitude over galactic domination. They were warriors, scientists, and dreamers, all bound by a code older than empires. When the Omega Rebellion's shadow fell upon Zarnith Prime, it was the Terran fleet that answered the call. Against overwhelming odds, they held the line. Against raging starfire, they shielded the innocent. Against death itself, they stood. Their ships, sleek and strange, danced like specters through the void, turning away destruction with uncanny precision. Their weapons were not just tools of war, but instruments of preservation, coded to disable rather than destroy. But the cost was heavy. One by one, the Terran vessels fell, consumed by plasma storms and fracturing gravity fields. Their sacrifice was total. And at the battle's end, as the last Terran ship disintegrated into the void, the Zarnith Emperor's ancestor, Emperor Valen, known then as the Guardian of the Core, swore a secret blood oath beneath the dying light of the binary stars. He pressed his palm against the cold steel of the Valkyrian armor, the ghostly suit once worn by Commander Yelin Kai, the Terran who had led the fleet with quiet dignity. "If ever the blood of Terra is shed in vain," he vowed, his voice barely a whisper carried on the solar winds, "we shall defend their legacy, even wearing their ghostly steel." The promise was etched in silence, buried beneath centuries of peace and forgotten history. Until now, back in the present, the Emperor stood within the war room of the capital fortress, staring at the sprawling holographic map that flickered with the shifting tides of conflict. Outer Rim factions, once fragmented and directionless, had united with a venomous purpose. They were jealous, fearful of the treaty the Emperor planned to sign, a treaty that would bring Earth back into the fold of galactic politics. To these factions, peace with Terra was betrayal, a threat to their power and freedom. The rebellion, they realized, was no longer spontaneous. It was a coordinated strike designed to cripple Zarnith before the alliance could be forged. The Emperor turned to Juno, his trusted assistant and voice of reason. "They know the history," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of memory. "They remember the dead ode, and they fear it." Juno nodded, tapping data streams that revealed the rebel fleet's maneuvers, striking supply lines, sabotaging communications, igniting civil unrest. "They want to prevent the treaty at all costs," she said. The Emperor clenched his fist. "Then we must remind them why we wear this armor." He stepped forward, placing his hand on the console. The Valkyrian suit responded to his biosignature, the runes glowing faintly, a beacon of ancient promise. As the Emperor prepared for the next phase of the battle, his mind drifted back to the Terran commander, Yelene Kai. She had been more than a legend. She had been the living heart of that forgotten war. Her image flickered in his memory. Fierce eyes, calm under pressure, a leader who believed in peace above all else. She had spoken to him once, in a vision forged between flesh and machine. "This armor obeys no crown, only purpose. Are you willing to bleed for peace?" The Emperor had answered then, and he would answer now. The plan was daring. Instead of meeting the rebels on the battlefield, the Emperor would infiltrate their ranks. Disguised by the armor's adaptive camouflage and ancient cloaking systems, he would penetrate the rebel stronghold on a distant asteroid fortress known as the Maw. Juno joined him, her expertise in Terran technology invaluable. Together, they moved through shadowed corridors, bypassing patrols and evading deadly traps. Every step was a reminder of the human debt they carried, not just to Terra, but to the countless lives lost in the rebellion centuries ago. Inside the fortress, the Emperor confronted the rebel leaders. The atmosphere was thick with tension. "I come not as your enemy," he declared, voice steady beneath the armor's hum, "but as a guardian of the promise made long ago." The rebel commander sneered. "Your peace is a lie, your armor, a cage. But it is also a shield." With a sudden burst of speed, the Emperor disabled the command center's weapons array, not with destruction, but with a pulse of bioresonance, the same harmonic override that silenced the rebel fleet above Zarnith. The rebels collapsed into stunned silence. Juno accessed the fortress's communication core and broadcast the Emperor's message galaxy-wide. The blood of Terra was not spilled in vain. The legacy of peace demands unity, not division. The message spread like wildfire. Some rebel factions wavered. Others hardened, but the tide had begun to turn. Back in the Emperor's private quarters, he removed the Valkyrian helmet and stared at the stars beyond the window. He whispered for Terra, for the future. Juno placed a hand on his shoulder. "You carry more than armor, your majesty. You carry hope." The Emperor smiled faintly. "And sometimes, hope is the greatest weapon of all." The galaxy held its breath, and somewhere in the distant stars, the ghost of a Terran commander watched over them still. The vast expanse of space above Zarnith Prime burned with fire and shadow. War fleets from every faction converged like predators circling a wounded prey. Stars blinked coldly through the chaos, silent witnesses to the final storm about to unfold. At the heart of the maelstrom stood the Emperor, clad in the ancient Terran Valkyrian armor, its neutron-forged plates shimmering with an eerie, almost living glow. The armor was no longer just a shell. It was a war machine bonded to his flesh and mind, a fusion of human bioengineering and Zarnithian resilience. As the Emperor's flagship cut through the void, the onboard Terran tactical AI, long dormant, awakened with a low, digital hum. Its voice, calm and precise, filtered through the suit's neural interface. Battle grid active, synchronizing fleet maneuvers. Target priority, rebel command nodes, and power relays. The Emperor's eyes flickered with the cold light of determination. "Let's begin." The Loyalist fleet surged forward like a tidal wave of steel and plasma. Their movements were no longer random acts of survival. They were a choreographed dance of destruction and defense, orchestrated in real time by the AI nested within the Valkyrian. Rebel sensors tried desperately to track the Emperor's flagship, to isolate and disable the armored figure leading the charge. Missile swarms and ion blasts rained down, but the armor adapted instantly. Enemy technology detected. Zarnithian ion disruptors. The AI whispered into the Emperor's mind. Deploying countermeasures. The armor's surface rippled as reactive shielding flared to life, bending light and energy around him like a shimmering veil. Terran will is not code. It's survival, the AI murmured, a phrase that echoed like a mantra through the Emperor's neural link. On the rebel flagship, panic grew. Their chief engineer snarled. The armor's tech is rewriting our protocols. It's impossible to penetrate. The rebel admiral, eyes wild with desperation, slammed his fist on the command console. We must find a weakness. That armor is the heart of their resistance. But the armor was more than just technology. It was a legacy, a ghost from a past that refused to be forgotten. Back in the Emperor's cockpit, the neural fusion with the Valkyrian deepened. The armor's HUD displayed tactical data streams, enemy positions, shield frequencies, and allied movements in a constant, flowing mosaic. The Emperor spoke into his comms, not to his troops, but directly into the enemy network. You wore to rule. I wore to end it. His voice echoed across rebel comm channels, sending a ripple of confusion and fear. The rebels scrambled to respond, but the armor's AI anticipated every move, every counterattack. The battle shifted into a new phase. Loyalist fighters, guided by the AI's real-time commands, executed daring strikes on rebel warships, disabling engines and communication arrays without firing a single lethal shot. Every move was surgical, precise, designed to minimize loss of life, but maximize strategic impact. The Valkyrian's neural interface pulsed, syncing with every ship and soldier on the Loyalist side, becoming a hive mind of purpose and resolve. In the heat of battle, the Emperor sensed a presence, an echo from the armor's ancient past. Commander Yelene Kai's holographic echo appeared within the helmet's display, her eyes burning with quiet fire. You carry the weight of many lives, she said softly. But remember, peace is the war worth fighting. The Emperor nodded, voice steady. I will end this for them. For Terra. Suddenly, the rebels unleashed a desperate gambit, a massive energy surge aimed directly at the Emperor's flagship, designed to overload the Valkyrian systems. The hull shook violently, alarms blared. But the armor held. Its core systems rerouted power, dissipating the surge like a storm breaking against a mountain. Resilience at maximum threshold, the AI confirmed. The Emperor stood unwavering. As the battle raged on, the Loyalist forces gained the upper hand. Rebel ships began to retreat, their formation fracturing under the relentless tide of coordinated strikes. The Emperor's voice rose again, carrying not just across comm channels, but through the very hearts of those fighting beside him. This war ends today. In the final moments, the Emperor's armor locked onto the rebel command vessel, the nerve center of the rebellion. With a surge of power, the armor deployed an EMP wave, crippling the enemy ship's systems and forcing an immediate surrender. Silence fell over the battlefield. The stars seemed to hold their breath. The Emperor removed his helmet, revealing a face marked by battle and resolve. He looked out at the remnants of the war fleets, the fires dying in the void. The war was over, but the promise, the human debt, remained. Juno approached, her eyes reflecting the distant starlight. You have done what many thought impossible. The Emperor's voice was soft but unwavering. I fought not for power, but for peace, for a legacy that transcends empires. As the fleets began their slow withdrawal, the Valkyrian armor powered down, its glow fading, but its legacy eternal. The galaxy would remember this day, not for the war that nearly tore it apart, but for the warrior who chose to end it. The war was over. The void that had roared with the thunder of warships and the fire of plasma blasts now lay silent, except for the soft hum of distant engines and the quiet, uneasy breathing of survivors. Rebel ships, battered and broken, drifted through the void as their commanders surrendered. The once proud fleet, now shadows of defeat, awaited their fate. But the Emperor did not order their execution. Instead, he stood tall on the bridge of his flagship, his armor dimmed but still glowing faintly with the last echoes of ancient Terran technology. Beside him, the human tactical AI, now fully integrated with the Valkyrian armor's remnants, whispered softly through the neural link. It is not the sword that grants peace, but the mercy shown in its silence. The Emperor nodded, feeling the weight of centuries and choices in his heart. He sent a broadcast across the rebel comm networks. You have fought bravely, but this war ends not in bloodshed, but in understanding. Lay down your arms and join us in rebuilding. Slowly, one by one, rebel commanders acknowledged his call. Their transmissions carried relief and disbelief. We yield. The Emperor's voice softened as he replied. Then let this be the dawn of a new era. The Valkyrian armor, once a beacon of ancient human resilience and power, began to show signs of failure. Cracks appeared in its neutron-forged plates, the living metal flickering like dying stars. The armor was never meant to last forever. Its core, infused with human bioconscience, started to dissolve. Yet, even in this final hour, it had one last message to deliver. From the chest plate, a soft light pulsed and a holographic inscription shimmered into existence. A message for all who would listen. Humanity does not build to conquer. We build to protect those who forget why peace matters. The Emperor touched the glowing words with reverence. The message felt like a promise, a legacy beyond war and crowns. He stepped before the gathered leaders of Zarnith and the surviving rebel factions. I declare the formation of the Pact of Terran Steel, he announced, his voice steady and resonant. A galactic accord that honors peace above empire. We are bound not by conquest, but by shared responsibility to protect life and liberty. Murmurs of hope rippled through the crowd. The scars of war were deep, but so was the desire for peace. Days later, on a distant world, a young alien prince sat before an ancient holoscreen. The flickering image showed the Emperor, clad in the now legendary human armor, leading the battle that had changed the fate of the galaxy. The child's wide eyes reflected the glow of the screen. He wore human armor, the prince whispered, voice filled with awe. But now we all carry it. The screen faded to black, but the echo of that armor, the ideals it embodied, resonated in every corner of the galaxy. It was not just metal or machine. It was a symbol, a call to remember that true strength lies not in ruling, but in protecting. And in that truth, the stars found new hope.